Welcome to Our Girl Relationships. We talk about the problems people face in their day to day lives. Let's start with the video. The first time I met Janice was in high school, even before I had met my husband. Hell, I met my husband way after I had met Janice, literally in college. Well, even though I did meet her before my husband, it wasn't like I was extremely close to her or something. She was just in my junior year class, and boy, was she a troublemaker. More than a troublemaker herself, though she seemed like she was troubled, as if she was just a bit miserable, and it was fair because just after a bit of digging, it was revealed to us that she had a bit of a tough life back home. Apparently, her parents had a bit of an unstable relationship. Well, we all tried to make her feel welcomed and aware that we were there for her, but unfortunately, nothing of that sort was enough for her. She often went behind people's back to talk smack about them, derided them, stole people's work, and the like. Within the first couple of months of her transferring, everyone had gotten fed up with her antics, but thankfully, the wait wasn't too long and she transferred schools the very next year itself due to her dad's work that caused them to move often. Flash forward to 2 years. I'm in my first year of college, towards the end of it, actually. The second semester is coming to an end, and everyone is kind of just crawling out of their shells and beginning to socialize. That is when I met August through my mutual friends. August and I met and started off as friends until I got into the second year of college, and by that time, he had graduated. I guess the distance got to us. The distance created when he moved away from the college campus, and soon enough, we found each other going on dates and eventually getting into a relationship. Our relationship was pretty great. Our personalities blended well. We got along great, and I just liked being with him. He was and still is a great guy until it comes down to his dear family. I didn't meet his family until I graduated from college, actually. We wanted to make sure that we were having a serious thing before introducing each other to our families, and that was honestly completely understandable to me. But just by the way he would constantly admire his family, especially his mom and sister, almost sort of stood out to me, almost in a awkward sense. Not sure why, but honestly, the fact that it did turned out to be true because that made me prepared. August finally introduces me to his family, and they're really sweet people. I wouldn't lie, but as soon as I get in, I immediately get greeted by the view of August babying both his mom and sister. It's awkward. I mean, watching a dude in his early 20s babying a woman in her late 40s and his sister of our age, it's all awkward. There, I find out that August has another elder brother who is married with children but lives extremely far away. Well, we have this awkward but overall decent meeting and just leave. This was only the start of me watching my boyfriend, who soon turned into my fiance, babying his sister and mom, till a point the two would openly express their jealousy over the fact that I stole him from them, which was honestly wrong and rich coming from them because those two were the ones jobless and in constant need of attention. So much so that once we moved into the same city as them after my graduation, he would drop things to literally go visit the two. I didn't have a problem with that though, because initially that would come off as him seeming like a great brother and son. It did become a problem though when literally 1 week after our marriage, he sat me down to tell me that Janice had made the decision to marry her deadbeat addict boyfriend who had knocked her up and was planning to be a stay at home mom. Well, I just gave a reaction that said, not my circus, not my monkeys. But then he dropped this bombshell on me. He told me that he wanted to help her financially because he couldn't see his little baby sister struggle as he lives his best life. I would be lying that red flags started rising in my mind, but I only resisted weakly, eventually giving in. This embarked on the beginning of a very codependent relationship and eventually the cause of arguments between August and I because eventually, as I was pregnant myself and gave birth to my son, I could see us both doing more for Janice and her children than myself. It all came to a head during a family dinner. Well, it was never like we didn't argue. Janice's entitlement had always caused arguments between us. Her taunting me for not getting her the right thing and then me lashing out at her wasn't something new. And that is what happened when my mother in law had invited all of us over for dinner over the occasion of his brother returning back to the city with his family to move here. This was the first time he was going to be here, so honestly, I wasn't looking to create a scene, but it happened as Janice began taunting me once again for the brand of laptop I had gotten for her husband for his work. I simply just told her that it was August who had gotten it, so she should talk to him. And boy, all hell broke loose. From cussing to screaming, she threw another one of her fits that she would. This time, surprisingly though, my husband's brother shot him a look. Hell, it was a death glare, and my husband, for the very first time, stood up for me and told Janice that it was him who had gotten the laptop and that she should talk to me with a bit more patience and care. I guess Janice understood the threat and started treating me very well. It was almost scary because she's never been this way. It was the very first day after my husband's sternness towards her. We had visited my brother in law's house to help them with moving in, and on our way back, she made me stop by her house to give me a gift. It was a very cool pair of sunglasses, brand spanking new. I just thanked her and thought nothing of it until the gifts just sort of started flooding in. Not just for me, but her mom and my husband both, from expensive perfume to shirts to random things. Janice had it all. It all came to a head on my birthday, though. She took me aside to give me my gift, looking all giggly as she told me to open it when everyone left, and I was shocked to find a necklace with a small diamond pendant. That is when I knew I had it. I decided I needed to know where she was getting all these things because there was no way in hell she was able to afford it with her husband's small minimum wage job that he had just recently gotten. Well, I was right. She actually couldn't afford it. It was a couple of days back when I was called over to look after my niece and nephew. It was a normal occurrence when Janice wanted to go give interviews for God knows what jobs. Well, regardless, I went over and took full advantage of the situation. I started looking around her place and initially didn't find anything suspicious. Almost on the verge of giving up, I just started to retreat to the living room. I don't know what clicks inside me at that moment, though. I just feel like I want to look inside her bed. And glad I did, because that is where I find out the treasure, or stolen treasure, I would say. I sat there trying to remove a huge suitcase, starting to immediately question if I should open it or not. After a couple of minutes of silence and contemplation, I open it to find out loads and loads of random items, all seemingly looking new. And as I'm scanning through them, I find a pair of earrings. These seem to be the oldest of them all, like someone had worn them, and it clicks to me. These belong to Evita, my brother in law's wife. How do I know, you ask? I remember the description clearly from my birthday, as she had been complaining about them and a few other items being misplaced during the moving process. I remember her talking about how these earrings were precious to her out of most of the items because they were gifted to her by her grandparents. Now, this is where I am. I'm very confused as to what to do. I'm not sure who I should tell about this first, but one thing I did was take a couple of photos of the earrings. I guess I know all that is remaining to do is confront Janice, but I know this all isn't going to end well, which is why I'm here. WIBTA if I tell my husband and my brother in law's wife that my sister in law has been stealing from them? Hi, everyone. I sat my husband down today and told him everything. Yes, he was in denial, but I guess more in the sense that he wished that this all was a sick joke, rather than thinking that I was lying. But I guess my serious face gave him the assurance that he seriously didn't want, and he started breaking down in tears, talking about how after all that he had done for her, this is how she decided to repay him. I couldn't help but feel empathy for him at this point, because even though I 100% agree that he was wrong to baby her so much, it was devastating to see him this way. After a lot of tears, August got up himself and told me that he would drive me to his brother's house. I very much liked that, as the anxiety of keeping this all to myself very much ate me inside. So we're on our way there currently. I will update you all once I see them. I met up with Evita and James, my brother-in-law, and immediately spilled everything. Honestly, Evita and James did not look surprised at all. They looked disgusted more than anything and like they were ready to call the cops. I wouldn't blame them, and honestly, after everything the two told me about Janice, I wouldn't blame her a single bit. Evita started off by talking about the time she and James were married. The two were also in pretty much the similar situation, and honestly, it all makes sense because my mother-in-law had almost groomed them to become this way after their dads passed away at an early age. So after constant arguing, almost being on the verge of getting a divorce and Janice stealing from them, James didn't have it in himself to confront them, and so they moved very far away for years, being on low contact. The only reason why they had moved back here was for James's job. I could see the guilt on my husband's face, as I guess being there around the time when this all played out for Evita and James made him realize his fault at another level. He stayed silent throughout the entire ordeal as Evita, James, and I came to the conclusion that they were going to press charges against Janice. They thanked us for informing them of the situation, and we just returned home. The drive home was a long, awkward one, full of realizations. It's been a couple of months since I last posted. There was a lot happening, and honestly, I didn't have the strength to get myself to post, but finally, after sorting most of the things out, I have some free time on my hands. Well, the day after I had visited Evita, she went to the cops with James and filed a report. The cops went over to Janice's place to get her side of the story, and oh boy, all hell broke loose. She threw an entire tantrum there, starting throwing stuff around her own place, and worst of all, attacked a cop, which gave him a solid reason to arrest her. After investigating her house, sure enough, they found the things, and after some more investigation, and Janice confessing of her own doings in another fit of rage, they were returned to Evita, and Janice was sentenced to jail time for theft. This has caused a major rift between Janice and her family and her mom because my husband and James refused to get her out since they cannot afford lawyers and such on their own. It just feels good to get my husband back, or should I say, it feels good to finally have a husband. We've started marriage counseling where we have already made ample progress, and I hope more is to come through the way. NTA, you have more of a husband problem, honestly. If you don't take a step now, you'll surely regret it later, and in my opinion, your husband's reaction to this situation will say a lot about him as a person. NTA, why haven't you done it already? It's not even your decision to make. Wouldn't you want to know if your things got stolen? It's kind of common sense. Honestly, I feel like more than the stealing issue, it's your husband you should worry about. I, male 26, live in an apartment with my fiance, female 26. We have a daughter, female 2. We have next door neighbors, a nuclear family with 2 children, male 14 and male 4. They've been living next door to us for around 3 months, and the noise has been extremely disruptive and annoying. Both of their children are homeschooled and are frequently up at odd hours of the night. The eldest frequently plays video games late at night with the TV on a ridiculous volume and randomly screams and cusses at the top of his lungs. Their youngest often kicks the walls and is left by the parents to do this. This frequently wakes up me and my family very late at night, and earplugs do little to stop this as the noise is often so bad the floor vibrates. The eldest son's screaming and cussing frightens my daughter. Our building's quiet hours are between 10 p.m. and 7 a.m. I first talked to the neighbors about this around 2 months ago, to which they responded that their eldest screams and cusses whenever he loses a game. They said their youngest kicks the walls during tantrums and that they let him fight it out. I told them that that doesn't matter and that the level of noise during late hours of the night is unacceptable. They said they'd deal with it. Fast forward to last month. The noise hadn't improved. They woke up my family at around 2 a.m. with the screaming, cussing, blasting TV, and wall kicking. I knocked on their door, but no one answered, so I decided to report them to our building manager along with video evidence. 2 weeks ago, I could hear their eldest blasting his video games and screaming again. This time it was around midnight. He woke up my poor daughter again, who was frightened, and woke up my fiancé as well. I was very fed up and went and knocked on their door again. This time, the eldest answered the door. It seemed as though he was the only one home. I, very sternly, told him he needs to keep the noise down and that he woke up my whole family. He sheepishly promised he'd be quiet and apologized. It was silent for the rest of the night. A couple of days afterwards, the neighbors appear at our door and are pissed. They accused me of intimidating their son and said that he was home alone that night. I told them that if they kept the noise down, I wouldn't have to keep knocking on their door and that they need to be more considerate. They called me a bully and said that I should be more considerate of other parents doing their best, and said that I frightened their son and caused him a panic attack. AITA? NTA. Though if the apartment management did nothing, then the next step would be to file a noise complaint with the police, as that technically is disturbing the peace. In the middle of the night and in an apartment complex at that, where you're supposed to be mindful of noise. NTA, you had no clue the kid was alone that night. You asked the parents to address it themselves a month earlier with no action taken. The only way I'd say you were an a-hole is if you'd chest bumped him or touched him or even put your finger in his face or something like that. His parents put him and your family in an incredibly shitty situation. Last month, before our dad's birthday, me, female 20, and my sister, female 17, thought about giving him an Apple Watch. Since I am a college student and my sister is still in school, that was kind of an expensive purchase. Our mom and little brother, 12 years old, decided to also participate so we can all give him this as a present because we knew he gets a lot of calls and messages during working hours, and that would make it much more easier for him to answer. When we ordered it, my sister told me she has no money saved up, and I said it's fine. I can pay for her share as well, and she can give it back when she has some money. So I ended up paying for half of the present. When we gave it to him, he was hesitant about how to use it at first, but then he got the hang of it and expressed how much easier it is for him to work with it and was using it every day. Anyway, a month passed. I was vacuuming in my sister's room and I see the watch on her bedside table. When I asked my mom, she casually said, "Oh yeah, Dad gave it to your sister." I was in shock, and I felt hurt that he just gave it away so easily. My sister didn't ask for it, as I know, but it's weird that she didn't tell me. When I expressed my opinion to my mom, that I earned this money through hard work and it was a big sum for me, and I feel sad that he did that. She said I'm behaving like a baby and it's not that big of a deal. My sister also didn't think it was a big deal and was pretty rude to me about it, keeping in mind that I wasn't even going to take back the money she owes me. When I asked my dad about it, trying to be as nice about it, even though you could see I was sad, he said, "What's the big deal? Maybe this is not a big deal, but it made me feel shitty. I was sad all day and still am thinking about this. So am I overreacting?" NTA, I bet your dad doesn't know you paid for half of the watch and your sister none. NTA, you put a lot of thought and money into that gift for your dad, and he did not appreciate it enough to keep it. My brother is the same way. It makes it very difficult to decide what to gift them in the future when they show a lack of appreciation for anything.